Okay, this is the intro for the podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Silver Screen Fiends podcast. I am your host, Sam. I'm joined once again by the good boy, Blake. And after another one of our very famous hiatuses, we're back for yet another episode regarding the illustrious Criterion collection. We are joined by a special guest this week, which is funny because I don't think anyone actually respects the show, but here we are. So she is a musician, a songwriter, a lover of old Hollywood, and a fellow Letterboxd fiend, which is the most important qualification of being on the show. She currently runs the Instagram page MaryLikesMovies, which is also her Letterboxd username. Go follow her. And she fondly, on this page, she fondly remembers stars of yesteryear through frequent posts about her favorite stars from the Golden Age, film reviews, and much more. But most importantly, she is somehow a fan of this very show. Please welcome
somehow.
Mary.
I love how you started off by saying that you didn't think people respected the show, and I ended up on the show somehow. I didn't say that I respected the show. I just wanted to be on the show.
I
don't respect it either.
I just asked to be on the show, and now I'm on the show.
Listen, you said it better than any of us could. So, damn, we're right out the gate with gold. Okay, so Mary, how the hell are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm drinking at 4:00 in the afternoon, so it's a pretty good Monday so far.
Oh yeah. I think Blake, you want to join us? I got my Jack Honey.
I got it's non-alcoholic, but it's seltzer.
Yep.
Does that count?
Can you throw
San
some
Pellegrino?
Can you throw something in there? Make me happy.
I mean,
we're gonna lose our sponsorship with thelobster.com. So anyway, I can't quite remember how we met virtually. I think one day we just followed each other on Instagram.
Yeah. I think y'all had followed me first, and then I was like, ooh, it's a podcast about movies.
I probably was just on a bender at 2 a.m, and it was must look up Gene Kelly hashtags, and I probably found you that way.
It makes sense. Right. That's how most people find me. Shit.
Yeah. Yeah, but you come to the right place. We don't like movies. Movies suck, but they're okay.
Yeah, bad.
So, a little housekeeping, not too much. What we like to do, Mary, when we start the show is we like to recount anything we've recently watched. So, I guess we'll start with you. What have you recently watched?
Shoot. I gotta pull up my Letterboxd for this.
Letterboxd? Nope, gotta be off the top.
Nuh-uh. Okay, well.
No, I'm kidding.
Well,
I go
I
through
have
my
a terrible
Letterboxd.
memory. I know that I recently rewatched a movie because I went on a rant about is Joe's the one that likes the old movies, right?
No, that is me.
Or that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm obviously, as you can tell by my Letterboxd, and if you follow my Instagram, I'm mostly into vintage movies, old Hollywood movies. So I recently went on a rant on my Tumblr about Lady Godiva of Coventry from 55. And it was the one with Maureen O'Hara, and she rides naked on the horse, and oh my god, she's so hot, or whatever. But I was ranting because it's actually a pretty fucking good movie, because she's this really badass character in it. So because of my ranting, I went back and rewatched it again because I was so angry about how people were talking about it. So I watched that. I'm working through the last few movies of Ginger Rogers. So I had watched Suicide Fleet, Forever Female, and Change of Heart. She's done over 100 movies, I think.
Yeah, she's done a lot. I like her in Swing Time.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about Criterion, I'm gonna get to that eventually.
Yeah, speaking of, right?
Yeah, and a bunch of pirate movies because I watch pirate movies.
Does that include The Pirate with Judy Garland and Gene Kelly?
I saw that a long time ago. I own it, but yeah, that was supposed to be on the list. I was supposed to be doing a pirate themed week, and that was definitely going to be a part of it.
Hell yeah. Cool. All right. So, Blake, what have you recently watched?
My recently watched is also very fitting of the kind of movies that I like, because my most recently watched is Return of the Living Dead, which I watched yesterday. And I love that movie. I have it on Blu-ray, so I was just bored, watched it. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Saving Private Ryan on July 4th to be patriotic and because it was on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And what else have I watched recently? I watched, this is not really a movie, but I watched Eric Andre's new special on Netflix. Have you seen that?
I did too. Yeah.
What did you like it? Because I didn't like it.
So I meant to comment in the group chat about what you said. Here's how I feel about it. For an Eric Andre piece of content, it was really funny. For a stand-up special, it was kind of like, I get what he's trying to do. Like he's experimental, but I think that maybe that was. Oh wow! I just pulled up your review on Letterboxd.
I went kind of hard on it.
You did. I know I'm like a little bit more open-minded when it comes to experimentation in comedy, and I think that the way I look at Eric Andre is kind of the way I look at Andy Kaufman, right? Because a lot of people associate him exclusively as a comedian, but his whole shtick was being a performance artist. And I think that, like, not to akin Andre to Kaufman, but I do believe that there are similarities with the way that he always just, like, tries to push the envelope. So, I mean, look, I stand the fuck out of him. So, like, I was a little biased. So I gave it 4 stars, but
I mean, I like him normally. I just, for some reason, that format just didn't work for me.
Yeah, I understand why people would not like it, certainly. But I personally loved it. I thought it was really funny.
Yeah, so those are my 3 most recent.
Okay. So completely out of recent character, it's so funny, like my letterbox is almost the same as like my iPod from like fucking 9th grade. It's just like from 1 second I'm Biggie and then it's like Cannibal Corpse. And then it's like Liza Minnelli. I'm like, what the fuck is going? So like, I rewatched Balls of Fury with my dad because it's one of those movies that I put on like once a year for background noise, and it's just like, it's so ridiculously dumb, but I just can't help but watch it. And then I saw that Criterion Channel finally put up "But I'm a Cheerleader," which is great because the last time I saw that movie was probably like 6 or 7 years ago, and I think it's a movie that has rightfully claimed its cult status. I think that a lot of people would just kind of shrug off that movie and be like, oh, it's like a stupid satire, but it's definitely about a lot more, and it's like super colorful with its sexuality. It's really funny. It's really it's almost like it's one of those dreamlike movies, right? So you feel like you're in a fever dream. But overall, I love it, and they did a good job. They messed with it a little bit. They didn't like fully restore it, but and then finally today I watched that Eurovision movie.
I haven't seen that yet.
I will say, like, it's super goofy, and I really liked the soundtrack. But I mean, that's where it ends. Like, the subject matter made me really enjoy it because I love Eurovision. Obviously, it's not a great movie, but I think that it's a lot of fun. I think it's one of those things of like, you know, every white middle-aged comedian like hits the phase of their career where they do like movies with horrible foreign accents, and it's like it's supposed to be a parody, but this one actually was okay. So, I mean, I wouldn't say go rush and watch it, but if you have like a spare 2 hours, go for it.
Yeah, I love Will Ferrell, but he's definitely a little bit over the hill in terms of like his best movies.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I don't rush to watch his movies like I used to.
Yeah, a lot of them are like that. A lot of people from that generation. It's just like, okay, you're kind of past your prime now, so
yeah,
gonna move on. But yeah, that's about it. I've been catching up more on shows and subjecting myself to the absolute torture of Dark Souls. But anyway, so I guess a little bit of housekeeping. We just lost the Italian composer Ennio Morricone, and that's really fucking sad. I know he was really old, so, you know, large life, but
yeah, I'm glad he got to win an Oscar relatively recently before passing away. That's pretty cool.
That is. I think that's really important. It's like, yes, please recognize genius. That's all we want. But actually, interestingly enough, my friend Zach sent me an article today recounting his life and his works. And they were talking about, and I don't know if this was general knowledge to the public because I just found out about this, but when Morricone was working on A Fistful of Dynamite, Kubrick wanted him for A Clockwork Orange. And apparently, Kubrick, out of courtesy, he was being courteous. He reached out to Leone, said, "Hey, like, can I use him for my project? I really want him to score the soundtrack." And he said, "Well," and Morricone was done with the movie, and Leone lied to him and said, "Well, I kind of still need him," and he missed out on doing A Clockwork Orange. So,
that's interesting.
It is. I didn't know that, but
it's interesting because I feel like the soundtrack in Clockwork Orange is like integral to the movie. So it'd be very interesting to hear him, who has a very different style than like what it ended up being. I feel like it would have been a whole different movie.
The only thing that like upsets me but makes me laugh at the same time is their use of Singing in the Rain, because when Gene Kelly was alive, he was like adamantly against them using that song in the movie. And he's like, "You just fucking ruined the entire tone of it." And it's like, well, I mean, I could still separate the two, but
I'm going to be honest. The first time I heard that song was when I saw Clockwork Orange.
Well, no, I mean, most people in our generation, that was probably the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really sad. I think he worked on like 400 scores in his career.
Yeah, he has 520 credits on IMDb.
Yeah, even more. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so big loss. Aging. Fucking sucks, bro. Just like movies.
True.
So anyway, on this episode, we'll be going through films that we believe deserve a spot in the Criterion Collection. If I have to explain that, you're on the wrong show. And because this is a wish list, I'm going to preface all this by saying we're going to completely ignore any current licensing or distribution rights by other studios. So we're just going to pretend like, even if it's Disney, we're just going to pretend like the Criterion Collection can acquire the rights. So
I didn't even think about Disney movies.
Me either.
It's just an example, but
yeah.
Hey, if you want
there's some good ones though that probably really could. Again, outside of, like,
sure. I mean, I could see like Fantasia being in the collection.
Yeah, some of those old animated ones, even like Pinocchio, Snow White, like the real old ones, Sleeping Beauty.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So yeah, I mean, I don't know who wanted to start. I guess I could go first. So I didn't write too many, but the first one I put, and again, I would say why am I shocked, but it's probably a studio thing, is 1941's The Maltese Falcon. I mean, when you think of classic movies from the golden age, that comes up in the conversation. And anyone who knows me knows that film noir is one of my all-time favorite genres. It's just something about that movement during the 40s and 50s. It was super dark and gritty. There was like that machine gun dialogue and that wit, dark lighting, gritty atmosphere. And it was always such a wild ride. Like, even if the movie was kind of dull around the edges, like Detour, like there was still something to find in it. But yeah, so Maltese Falcon, I think I've talked about the movie on the show, so I won't go too much into it, but directed by John Huston, who, and the cool part is this was his directorial debut. So we have somebody coming out the gate it's kind of like how Orson Welles came out with Citizen Kane. It's like you have someone coming out of the gate with like one of the greatest classic films of all time. He's also known for Treasure of the Sierra Madre, The African Queen, and Key Largo, to name a few, which are also some of my other favorite movies. But stars Humphrey Bogart, and he plays Private Eye Sam Spade. And it basically just unravels into like this. It starts as like a weird murder mystery and fleshes out into like a classic femme fatale story. The femme fatale is played by Mary Astor. And also stars Peter Lorre and Sidney Greenstreet. I believe it was his first movie, Sidney Greenstreet. And they idolize and worship this weird figure called the Maltese Falcon, as the title suggests. And it basically just like divulges into this multi-layered story where like Sam Spade's partner gets murdered in the beginning, so you think it's gonna like focus on that, and then it kind of just unravels into like this whole other plot line. But yeah, I think that as far as remakes go, this is definitely one of the best out there, and a lot of people don't realize that there is a I think it was 1931 or early 30s. There was an original adaptation based on the novel The Maltese Falcon, but this one is the one that history remembers. Like I haven't even seen the original one.
I didn't even know it existed.
Exactly. Like a lot of people don't, and it's one of the few cases in history where the remake was unanimously better than the original. So it's definitely, it's great because like, so the focus of the movie is this jewel encrusted falcon, right? But I love it because it explores the absolute fucking greed of humanity. Like everyone is just after this thing. They're going to pay fuck tons of money for it. They don't care how they acquire it. They don't care who they lie to. Literally they're confronted by law enforcement. They don't give a shit. Like even Sam Spade, the character played by Bogart, he's sort of like, obviously he doesn't care as much about material possessions, but you know, he's dealing with all these unscrupulous people, and you start to like gain insight into him as a character a little bit more, and you realize like he's actually kind of an anti-hero because he's like pretty much a dickhole, and the way like he goes about everything, it's like super questionable, but at the end of the day you can see he's out for what's just. And so in that situation he's obviously like trying to stop Green Street and Laurie from succeeding in bringing in the Falcon. But I think that this definitely deserves a spot in the collection, and I think it could benefit from a restoration too.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that movie's kind of like for like noir detective movies. It's sort of like how Halloween is like the basis of all slasher movies. That's kind of like the basis of noir movies to come after that, from like the themes, like you said, with greed and everything, and especially the characters. Like Sam Spade is kind of like who all the later like noir detectives were like trying to be like impersonations of that character pretty much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They basically set the template for almost all of them. Yeah, so I would definitely say that should be top priority in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should do that. So yeah, whoever wants to go next?
I guess I'll go next because I have a whole list on my letterbox. So that was a plug. That was another plug in case you missed it. My letterbox, MaryLikesMovies.
MaryLikesMovies.
I followed. Don't worry.
Thank you. I saw that. So yeah, this is something that's obviously near and dear to my heart because I spend, how much is it? $13 a month to watch maybe 2 or 3 movies through the channel.
Mm-hmm.
But I have like a lot of movies that are just, you know, I can't remember who was in my live the other day, but we were talking about like this specifically. Number 1 for me is The Clock from 1945. It's like one of my favorite movies of all time. Really obscure for a lot of different reasons. One, it was like a really simple throwaway, like romantic drama, like wartime, blah, 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 because, you know, 45, whatever. And really simple storyline of like boy meets girl on his furlough for 2 days and they fall in love, they get married, spoiler alert, but not really. But the cool thing is there's like a lot of cool stuff to unpack with it. Directed by Vincent Minnelli, who is amazing, remembered for An American in Paris, Gigi, Brigadoon, like all of the big name musicals.
Yep.
Technicolor musicals in like the 40s and the 50s. And Judy Garland is the main love interest opposite Robert Walker. So you have Vincent Minnelli, who's like remembered mostly for Technicolor musicals. You have Judy Garland, who's also remembered for Technicolor musicals because she sings great. And this is not a Technicolor musical at all. She doesn't sing in it. She's purely a dramatic actress. There's some comedy in it. But in the way that he directs her specifically at the time, like I think they were either just married or they were engaged after he had done Meet Me in St. Louis with her. And the way that he directs her in these scenes, the way that he shoots her as the center of the universe is like amazing. Plus the entire idea of the clock itself. The entire idea of the clock, it's like a theme that's intrinsic throughout the entire movie, because like he's on a 2-day furlough, so they only have 2 days to meet and fall in love and get married and realize, oh my god, did we make a mistake, did we just like ruin our lives, basically.
Right.
And it seems like in this like 1.5 hours that this movie is going on, it feels like an eternity. It feels like an entire love story is just unraveling. And the moments, like, especially in what I call the park scene, because I wrote a college dissertation about this movie, quite literally. They have the scene in the middle of it called the park scene, where Robert Walker and Judy Garland are literally just talking about the universe and, you know, I think the ships in the harbor all tie into our love story, and I think it was meant to be, but was it meant to be, and all that bullshit. And it's like, it's super cheesy and it seems really overdone, but just there's something about it that feels really magical, and it just makes you feel like you're a part of the story and like it's important. And I think that's the coolest part about it, is none of those films are important, like, now that we think about it. Like The More the Merrier from 43 or whatever, like all these romances during the war just felt like propaganda, especially coming from our view of today of like, oh, it was just meant to, you know, sell war bonds and shit. But it's so hard to find one that feels real to the experience of people at that time, you know, to young people like getting married on somebody's furlough to somebody they don't even know. So definitely think that needs to be in there. Minnelli is such an underrated director for all of the wrong reasons. Like, I love his movies as much as the next person. I love An American in Paris. You know, like, it's really hard not to like the big flashy stuff, but it's like the quiet projects that he gets to really like bring out his deep like artistic touch that I think are underappreciated. So The Clock.
My only comment about The Clock is I appreciate because I'm a sucker for like those old title sequences, and I like The Clock because all it is it's like this orchestral theme, but in the background you just see a clock and the hands are moving, and I'm just like, it's so simple but so cool for the time, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, Vincent Minnelli definitely, I think, deserves more credit. And I love An American in Paris. I think as far as like all those musical goes, as far as Gene Kelly's body of work, like that was fantastic. Like when you see him in the I Got Rhythm number, you can tell he's like genuinely admirable of children and loves and respects them, and that was like so nice to see. And also it's just like such a grandiose production. I mean, you have music composed by like George Gershwin, and it's like so ambitious, but when you look at it from an outside perspective, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, it's just like another musical number, and then it just like gets swept under the rug. So, but yeah, I've always been a fan of Minnelli's work. For sure. Yeah. So, insane letterboxd. Would you like to go next?
Sure. I'll pick the one from my list that's like as close in time period. I had Freaks on my list, the Todd Browning movie from 1932.
Yes.
Mostly because I just love that movie,
Mhm.
and I think it could definitely use a restoration because it's so like visually, like the visuals are so important and so influential. And right now, I don't even know if it's on Blu-ray. Really, it might be in like a Blu-ray like combo pack or something, but I don't even know where you can get it. So I feel like a Criterion release would be really, really cool. I'd love to like see like a restoration. I'd love to see some special features about it. I just think it's like a really like important movie, especially looking at like the time period, because Todd Browning was like a circus performer before he was a director.
Right.
So he had a lot of like respect for the whole culture of like the circus and everything. And even though it's easy to say like, oh, it's like exploitative of the performers, it really isn't when you watch the movie and like follow the story. They're the heroes in the story, which is very strange for that time period, to have the, you know, quote unquote monsters be the good guys and the, you know, beautiful people are the villains.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it's a really important movie. I would love to see it really get like the full Criterion treatment. Have they done Dracula? I'm not sure if they've done any of his movies.
No, the thing with Dracula is that because it's a Universal release, they kind of, and they already did like a big box set, like a restoration set of like all of the Universal Legacy collection. So Universal probably wouldn't give up the rights to that.
Yeah, but even though I love Dracula, I'd rather see Freaks. I think if it was up to me, I think it's a really great movie that doesn't really get enough love.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was talking with somebody about wanting to restore Freaks, and I think it would also be cool if Arrow Video took a shot at restoring it.
That'd be cool.
Because I know they're like really into that cold horror. But what the really interesting part about Freaks is, because it's a pre-code film, it's one of those movies where if they had done it just a couple years later, it probably wouldn't have even gotten past the censors.
Yeah,
like
right.
it was just so controversial at the time, and it dealt with a very serious problem, which was people trying to, people just basically like passing immediate judgment on disabled people and assuming that they're less than them. And it's great because like in the last arc of the movie, when one of the freaks overhears Cleopatra and they finally seek their revenge on them, you see that sense of justice. Like their eyes light up and they're like, yeah, we're gonna do this. Yeah.
And that scene in particular in the rain at the end would be amazing to see restored.
Yeah
because it's such a visually like awesome sequence.
Yeah. And it's basically like a metaphor for the class system too, because even if you're not dealing with disabled people, I mean, the whole point is Cleopatra is trying to shack up with the dwarf because she hears that he's got a large sum of money, and you really see her character through how shitty of a character she is through that, and I feel like in the social hierarchy we have, like, there's really just upper and lower class. Like, we don't even have middle class anymore. And so upper class views lower class as like low living pieces of scum, and low class views upper class is like basically the same thing, but with money. So it's really, it's a really good study on the human psyche. I really love that movie.
Yeah. And like, I feel like just if they were to like remake it with the same story, I feel like people would talk about it being socially relevant, and it came out in the 30s, so it really is like a super progressive movie. I think definitely, I know people view it as like controversial, but it definitely deserves like way more eyes on it. I think it's really important.
I think it was also really cool that the first time I saw it, I was freaked out by it, because horror in any century freaks me out. Like, unless it's overdone, like ridiculous, it's gonna freak me out. But one thing I really took away from Freaks the first time I saw it was the fact that all of the characters actually had like disabilities and like actual physical differences. They didn't just take characters who everybody knew and like actors who were comedic actors or whoever and like throw like weird features on them and say, oh, these are gonna be like our freaks or whatever. Like, they took people with those disabilities and paid them and like actually gave them a face and like gave them representation. And it's sort of like something that we saw in what's the one called, The Best Years of Our Lives, something like that, I think so. But it's where they used like an actual actor to act as a veteran who was a double amputee, and he was a veteran who was a double amputee. So it's relevant, it's even more relevant because we barely have real representation like nowadays, where characters who are able-bodied play characters who have disabilities just because they're household names.
Yeah, and that's why I think like nobody but Todd Browning could have made that movie, because I don't think, especially back then, anybody had respect for like circus performers, people with disabilities, like he did, because he was a part of that lifestyle. He grew up as a circus performer. So it's like kind of like the perfect storm to like create this amazing movie that's still so relevant.
Yep. Agreed. I would love to see that restored. Holy shit. I'm sure I've heard rumors that one of the big boutique labels was going to work on it, but I don't know how it's going to work as far as rights goes, but
yeah,
we'll see. That'd be really exciting. Yeah, so I guess that goes back to me then. So I'm going to go ahead and inch up just a few years, and I'm going to select the Alfred Hitchcock movie Rope. And this was hard for me because I am a very big Hitchcock fan, and Vertigo is like one of my all-time favorite films. But I think Rope, so for those that don't know, long story short, Rope is a 1948 Hitchcock film, and it deals with two upper-class gents who are, I believe they're in college, and one of them convinces the other to murder one of their other friends, and they decide that the one who convinced him is such a sick fuck that he decides he's going to throw a house party with the friend's dead body in a trunk, and they're going to use it as a table to display food and candles. And so and then Jimmy Stewart, one of my all-time favorite actors, plays one of their old psychology professors, and they invite him, and it becomes like this whole, it is so beyond tense, and we tend to use that word a lot in film, but just from start to finish, Rope has me on the edge of my seat no matter how many times I watch it. I'm like, I know what's gonna happen, but just the fact that you think like every person there could figure out the secret is just like fucking insane to me. But it's great too, because so the main characters, Brandon and Philip, there's kind of like this. Rope in itself wasn't supposed to be like an LGBT movie, but there's like these homosexual overtones between the two main characters, and I thought it was kind of cool how you see all this tension building up and the way that they argue with each other, that it was sort of Hitchcock's way of saying like, well, I know the sass of the industry right now, but I think this is like also an important message. So he just threw that subtext in there, and he was like, I'm just going to go for it. But Jimmy Stewart, and I've seen a lot of his movies, definitely puts on one of the greatest performances in this one, because he's just constantly, the way he's questioning Brandon and Philip and the way he's getting into their psyche, and just the constant back and forth. They think they got away with it, then they didn't, then he figures it out at the end. It's just like a fucking wild ride from start to finish. So I think that definitely deserves to be in the collection. And the print that I saw last year of it wasn't absolutely terrible, but just imagine if Criterion got their hands on it, it would just be that much more apparent. But really good. Love Hitchcock. Love Jimmy. I think it was overall just like a really good psychological thriller. Really good. Have you guys seen Rope?
No, I haven't seen it, but now I want to.
Yeah, and what's
the story sounds good.
And another interesting thing is the movie is not like one continuous single shot like the Birdman, but it's known for like its really long takes. So if Brandon opens the door for a guest, right, and the shot starts like in the dining room, they will keep focused on the two characters by the door, then they'll keep them in the same cut, then they'll walk towards the dining room to make a right like into the kitchen, and the camera will stay in that one spot. And I think it's really cool for building up the tension too, because you kind of just feel like uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Like, all right, like what's going on? I can't like quite see the face right now, or what, like it's there's like a little bit of muffle here. And so I think that was a brilliant move on Hitchcock's part to do that. But yeah, definitely check it out. You would really like it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and watch that. It's
I
also
thought it
funny.
was-
I'm looking at IMDb and the plot keywords. They have like a plot keyword section, and the first two are long take and gay subtext. So basically, both points that you made.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah.
I was gonna say 1917, but anyway.
True.
Right.
It's funny because like I never even thought about the subtext of that, but now that you bring it up, just like literally throw out the entire idea of the body, and it's like a thriller story about two people like trying to hide how they like each other. Like just remove the part about them murdering somebody, and that just makes sense on its own of like there being a gay subtext to it.
Yeah,
So.
it's super interesting. I think no matter how many times I watch the movie moving forward, it'll just be something very apparent to me. But yeah, Rope. Love it.
It's a good one. I guess I'm next.
Yep.
Oh boy. There's so many. One that I saw like a few months ago, it's called Dutchman from 1967. And I didn't know anything about it. I don't even know how I found out about it. But it's really weird and it's really hard to find it anywhere. And it's sort of like, I don't even know how to describe, like I can't even describe it, especially because I haven't seen it in a couple months, but it's basically like this woman and this man. The woman's white, the man's black, and they meet on a train. Mind you, this is the 60s. And it was Shirley Knight's first role, who passed away. I think that's how I found out about it, because she passed away like a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
And everybody was talking about her filmography. But basically like this woman meets this guy on a train, and it's an empty train. And I think the movie's like a little under an hour, a little over. So all of this is taking place on this train with these two people. And she like is the most uncomfortable character like of all time, because she tries to like seduce him. She tries to move in on him. And he's just like, you know, a businessman, like he's very straight-laced, and he's like, okay, I don't know you or whatever. And she keeps trying to move in on him, and every time like he starts to kind of give in to her, she lashes out at him. And like as the movie progresses, you're focused so much on them, but people start to come in on the train. And so every time she lashes out, you realize that like they're on a train with people, and it just makes it so much more uncomfortable. And so the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, why would somebody just want to make this film for the purpose of being super duper uncomfortable and awkward? And obviously I had to go and like look up essays, because I was like, there has to be some kind of meaning in this. And I'm like a brick. But it's basically, it was written by a man who was like known for writing pieces that were like conversational, especially about the Black struggle in America. And The Dutchman was a play that he had written, and it was supposed to represent like the struggle of Black Americans to like break the boundary of like white society. And he does it in this amazing way, and the acting is great. The acting is amazing. I had never seen Shirley Knight or the man who played Clay, but it's just like something that it's like, you know, that it should be on the Criterion collection. Like, you know that there's so much to unpack, and that's what I like about the films that we have in the collection, is that they get talked about, and that we get like essays on them, and we get discussions. So I really want somebody to like take this, like historians and academics, and like unpack all of the facets of it, because it is like a really good, impactful movie. And I think, like we were talking about earlier with like the cultural climate right now, like it seems like a super important thing that people should see. And it also would probably do with a restoration, considering like I found it like online on one of these random like stream sites. So definitely The Dutchman, 1967.
Yeah, I took like a similar approach to a lot of the movies I picked, in that it's not even necessarily the restoration that I really would like, but like all of the like special feature discussion, like analysis, those kind of things. There's so many movies that could use that, and I would love to see Criterion like producing that. And it sounds like that's definitely the case with this movie too. It's like the restoration's great, but I really would love to hear like real like historians like analyzing it, and more than like finding video essays on YouTube or something.
Yeah, see, like that's what I liked about Swing Time so much. Like I only own 4 Criterion titles on DVD, or 4 or 5 or whatever.
How dare you?
It's funny because it's funny because whenever I went back and listened to episode 1 of the podcast, and somebody was talking, we were talking about, or y'all were talking about, I'm not a fiend. I'm not a fiend. Y'all were talking about how like y'all wait until a sale comes up to buy them, and I'm like, yeah, same.
Yeah.
I'm like a Barnes and Noble member, like, and I barely buy them even though I have like a discount. But I've pre-ordered 2 of them. One of them was Clooney Brown because I love Jennifer Jones.
Oh,
like
Ernst Lubitsch is fucking fantastic.
Yes. Charles Boyer, okay,
Yeah.
he was in it. Why not? I had no choice. But the other one was Swing Time, and I got it because it was one of the only Astaire and Rogers films that like I didn't already own. I honestly don't care about the quality of movies. Obviously, if I can watch it in a better quality, I will. But like I just buy it to have it, basically. So when I got Swing Time, I just got it to own it. But like they gave so much historical and like the essays on it. Like they had an entire segment on the bonus features devoted to the blackface scene that Fred Astaire does. Yeah. That was amazing because like first time I watched Swing Time, I didn't think anything of it. I was like fairly new to the world of old movies, so I didn't know that was like a thing that they did. But yeah, like I go nuts for like the bonus features and the essays and stuff that they give with it.
Yeah, they do an excellent job with any movie they get. It's just such a labor of love. It doesn't matter what you're looking for in a movie. They'll just like go so above and beyond to get you like an interview from one of the extras from like a passing by train scene, and the psychological impact of the movie on young teens in America. And like they just fucking go all out, and I love them. But also, yeah, I wanted to do this episode too because the summer sale is around the corner. They're saying it's supposed to be the 10th, so I guess we'll see if that's absolutely true. I'm not quite sure, but I'm ready to be broke once again. And
Same.
And yeah, so I think, Blake, were you
Is it
next?
my turn? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So my next pick, I mean, it's pretty obvious looking at it that the collection is very lacking in Kubrick's like heavy hitter movies. I think there's like Dr. Strangelove is on there, and I think Barry Lyndon, but like there's no 2001, there's no Clockwork Orange.
Right.
So obviously my choice is The Shining because it's my favorite movie ever made in the history of film. And it's again kind of going back to what we were talking about with special features. There's literally an entire movie documentary that's been made about people's theories on The Shining. It's called Room 237.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there's just so much content that I would love to see just based around The Shining. Obviously, I would love to see it restored, although it's still in pretty good shape. Like I don't know who has the distribution rights, but it's pretty easy to find a good copy of it. But
I think it's just Warner Bros.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But the amount of like content behind the scenes and like analysis and like the history and everything, I would love for like Criterion to really like do like an insane release of that. And like I said, it needs more Kubrick to begin with because there's not really any of his big movies.
I will say this though, they did a great job with Paths of Glory. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people, when you introduce Kubrick into the conversation, Paths of Glory usually does not come up, but that is arguably one of my favorite Kubrick movies. Mm-hmm. But I think The Shining definitely should be in the collection.
Yeah, he's similar to another director who's one of his movies I have on my list, where it's like I feel like it shocks me when I look at how few of his movies are actually on there.
Yeah, I think,
and I'm sure it's just licensing, that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
it's always bullshit politics.
But yeah, The Shining is obviously my pick. It's my favorite movie.
So I wanted to ask you this. So how do you feel about this history of going back and people examining the relationship between Stanley Kubrick and Shelley Duvall? How do you think it affected her mentally?
I don't know, but it doesn't really affect my view of the movie. But I mean, I understand why people might be upset about it, because it was definitely unhealthy. But I mean, it's still one of the greatest movies ever. It's still an incredible performance, even though when it came out, it was like basically mocked. But yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion on it. I wasn't there, so I can't really say. And Kubrick's no longer alive to defend himself, so I don't know the truth, I guess. But yeah, I mean, you can see that her performance is pained, I guess is the right way to put it. And she does a very good job of being terrified, which it seems to be she was terrified. So yeah, it doesn't really affect my view of the movie. And I think that she gives one of the best performances in a horror movie.
Yeah, I think that definitely no matter how you got there, the end result was just like beyond a traditional psychological horror. It was just like so fucking eerie and atmospheric and tense and horrific and kind of exciting in a weird way. Like just at every corner you turn.
Yeah, the atmosphere of that movie is like unmatched, I think. It really is the like entire like content of the movie is the atmosphere. It's because if you actually really break it down, not that much happens for most of the movie, and it's really just mostly atmosphere. Obviously there's like the big climax at the end, but for the most part, it's a pretty slow movie, and it doesn't feel like it, just because the atmosphere is so well done and so like dreadful.
Yeah, I mean, when the director only feeds Jack Nicholson cheese sandwiches for 2 weeks to get him into character, you kind of get some good results.
I think Jack Nicholson enjoyed the cheese sandwiches.
I think Jack Nicholson needs to enjoy less spaghetti-filled Tupperwares courtside at the Lakers game. No, but he can do whatever the fuck he wants. But I think, yeah, obviously, without question, I have thought the same thing about The Shining. I think it deserves to be in the collection.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think the next one I put on my list was Martin Scorsese's Casino. And again, this is another case like with Rope where a lot of people would expect me to probably go with a more mainstream choice, but I think Casino is one of his more underrated films, because when you're talking about his body of work, it kind of gets lost in the conversation. But overall, I think it's like, as far as like those epic crime films, it plays such an important part in history. And I think like people tend to overlook it because, number one, it's a really long movie, and it's a victim of Scorsese syndrome.
Yeah.
but I think all of his choices, his storytelling, Scorsese's storytelling is probably arguably some of my favorite storytelling ever. And I think that it could be as simple or complex as you want it to be. I mean, he presents gangsters, he presents De Niro, which I think at this point in their career, this was like their 10th collaboration together. And it stars De Niro as a man who gets put up to look after a casino, the Tangiers Casino. And I believe this is all based on a true story. and then he brings Pesci in, and an old town degenerate who breaks legs and doesn't give a fuck who knows about it. And obviously they got a good thing going, but Pesci gets too greedy, starts robbing from the casino, and then there's this whole fucking there's this whole unraveling friendship that comes along with the actual legal repercussions. So you have these two simultaneous storylines, and then you throw in the love interest played by Sharon Stone, and now you have another element of betrayal and mistrust, and there's like so much going on, but it's presented in a way that's very digestible. And I think, to me, that's why I love it so much. Mm-hmm. It's like, it doesn't have to be like bang, bang, boom, like action, fireworks, like everywhere. It's just kind of, this is the story. It's just being fucking told. Like, it's not trying to be anything it's not, you know?
Yeah.
So I
definitely agree. Also, I feel like it's one of his more like epic movies. It's like a grander scale than like Goodfellas or obviously, you know, some of his earlier movies.
Yeah.
And I think it, I don't think that people really realize that, because it is after the like golden age of his gangster movies, and it really is his last like big crime movie before The Irishman.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's super. It's much bigger in scale than a lot of his other movies.
Yeah, it's just overall,
or at least his other crime movies.
It's great too, because it doesn't matter what genre you're mostly a fan of. Like, there's something for everyone in this movie. It's just all around a great movie. It's like, do you like documentaries and biopics? Do you like comedies? You like dark comedies? You like action? You like crime? You like drama? You like romance? Like, it literally has everything. It's like one of my all-time favorites. But
yeah, and it still also has like the quotability and like the fun aspects of like a Goodfellas type of movie. Like, my dad loves quoting Casino, and if my dad loves to quote it, then it definitely is, you know, similar to Goodfellas, because that's like one of his favorite movies.
Just the whole idea that Sam Rothstein, De Niro, as a character is so cold and calculated and controlling is both admirable and really offensive to type B personalities, because it's sort of like you have this man who is trying to come off as doing the right thing. Then you remember he's from a background of crime, and it's crazy. Like, for example, in the scene when he goes up to the chef and he's complaining about the blueberries and the muffins, and he's like, I want an equal amount of blueberries in every muffin. And it's like, you laugh at that, but he's like such a sadistic, controlling bastard.
Right. It's like, you laugh at it, but it's an important character moment too.
It is, because you know that this is much more than him taking this seriously in a professional manner. This is him executing his absolute control over the situation and everyone involved in it. And I think that, like, once the betrayal begins, it just becomes this whole fucking avalanche of absurdity, and I just love it.
Yeah, actually, I think it's definitely a good precursor to The Departed also. I feel like he took a lot of what worked in Casino and, you know, used that in The Departed, which is also another like big, epic, grand scale crime story that's like part like Shakespearean tragedy at the same time. And like Casino's the first one that I feel like is also Scorsese sort of going for the like epic tragedy, like disguised as a gangster movie.
And Scorsese's casting decision to include Don Rickles was definitely tremendous in a movie like this, because even though he's not in every scene, he plays Sam's right-hand man, basically. He's not in every scene, but just to have such a powerful comedic icon be in that movie alongside other greats and Scorsese, it just kind of like reassures you his solidified placement in cinematic history. And I've heard stories like they would always try to film and Don would be cracking them all up, and they'd have to do like numerous retakes, and there's so much about this movie I love. I could gush over it forever.
I forgot Joe Bob Briggs is in it too, very briefly. He has a brief cameo.
Yeah, I think wasn't he the one with the cowboy hat?
Yeah. It's Joe Bob.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's funny to see him pop up in this movie, like when you rewatch it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so overall, and boy, I love when James Woods gets the shit kicked out of him. I'm sorry, good actor. He just has a very punchable face.
Yeah, he does.
I'm not a hateful person, but there's just something about his face. Anyway, moving on. So Casino, great, fucking needs to be in the collection.
Yeah.
Okay. Shoot. Kind of at odds with myself, because here's the deal. So whoever was in my live last week.
Oh, that was me, by the way.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We talked briefly about how I mentioned Blade Runner. And I want Blade Runner in it, obviously, for the same reasons as everybody else, like because it belongs there. It's historically significant. But the thing is, it's already had a remake. I mean, not a remake. It's already had like a remastery, basically. We have the director's cut. We have essays. We have like people extensively breaking the film apart. Like when I saw it in theaters for Flashback Cinema that happens in my town, they gave us like this whole breakdown of it before the movie even started, and I think partially after the movie ended. So it's like, it's just going to be there. Like, I just want it there with a Criterion number on it. Like,
it just feels like it belongs, even if there's not much more to add.
Yeah.
Well, like, at the very least, it does have a Criterion Laserdisc. So at least Criterion has acknowledged its existence.
But like do it in a 2-pack with 2049. Like, I'd buy that.
That'd be cool.
That would be awesome. I could see them doing that.
Yeah.
Again,
that's how I felt about like 2001. It's like, it's just weird to me that it's not in there.
Yeah. Yeah, and they always come out with these Kubrick box sets that it's like in theory are cool, but I don't want to. Like, there's something about it.
I want 2001, Clockwork Orange, The Shining. Like, give me those.
I would also. What I want. I know Criterion wouldn't do this, but I could see maybe Kino Lorber doing like Full Metal Jacket or something.
Yeah, that one too.
Like that, I would like to see that because Arlie Ermey's performance in that is amazing. But yeah, definitely Blade Runner should be restored.
Yeah, it just feels wrong that it's
just
not.
Just put it in the collection already. The people want it. My goodness. No, like if we're gonna talk about things that need to be in like a collection within the collection, I want all of Ed Wood Jr.'s worst B films remastered. And just put in a box set.
Oh my God.
And put it in a trash bag. And I'll pre-order it. Put it in a trash bag and hand it to people. And say, here, go fuck yourself.
There is a box set, an Ed Wood box set, and it's covered in like this pink Angora material. And I think it might be VHS though. There's a DVD collection, but the one I'm talking about might be
makes
VHS.
it even better.
But I was going to say Criterion should just release it as VHS. Release that as Laserdisc.
Oh God! When I first saw the Ed Wood biopic, and Martin, and I know it's so good, and Martin Landau when he first comes on as Bela Lugosi, it's just like obviously. It's an embellishment, but it is so fantastic the way Landau approached the character.
Yeah. Honestly, that's another movie too. Like, I don't think they have any Tim Burton movies, and if you're gonna have one, like Ed Wood is the one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I didn't even think about Tim Burton. Yeah, I mean he's made.
Yeah, I just searched it. They don't have any of his movies.
Shit.
Just give fucking everyone. Give Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, honestly, Norbit Criterion.
Norbit.
Let's make it happen.
By the way, Blake, real quick, I forgot to tell you, I just found out last night from my friend Zach that apparently Norbit was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, didn't it win?
For the
for makeup or something, yeah.
Because it is convincing.
My two favorite Oscar movies, Norbit and Suicide Squad.
Oscar nominated Norbit is how I'm always gonna present the movie. I would love to see like Edward Scissorhands in the collection.
Yeah, just any
Oh,
Tim
yeah.
Burton movie.
I
Him
think
too,
that
it's
would be
surprising.
great. Yeah, I think. Well, especially because my boy Vincent Price is last role. But yeah, so I think Burton definitely belongs in the collection somewhere.
With time.
Yeah,
We'll
maybe. Yeah. So I put like a bunch of honorable mentions, but I guess they could also just be my picks. But I included North by Northwest, which was another Hitchcock movie, alongside Vertigo. I think those two are some of his absolute best. And I know it's recent, but I think eventually I would love to see. I know it's A24, but I would love to see Uncut Gems in the collection.
I have Hereditary on my list also because I tried to pick just one recent one. And that one too, like obviously it doesn't need to be restored, but I would love to get some more like behind the scenes stuff.
But as one of my favorite horror movies of the past,
Yeah,
like 15 years, that
Yeah,
definitely belongs on the list. Yeah.
and Uncut Gems too. I would love to just get like all the special features.
Yeah, because here's the good part. Everyone's alive. You can
Yeah.
just like be able to freely pick up the phone and be like, hey, you're not on the Iron Lung yet? Like, let's talk about the fucking movie.
Yeah.
So, but I would love to just see the Safdie brothers like gush
Mhm.
about cinema. I love watching the Criterion channels,
Yeah,
adventures
I
and
watch
movie going segments, and they're on there, and it's great because you could see them as brothers. Their dynamic is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Unlike the fucking Coen brothers who decided they're gonna split recently.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, I guess you want to try your own thing now, but like you guys are great together. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
I also put Sunset Boulevard on my list. I think that's a really important movie. I also put Chinatown on there because I'm a fan of noir.
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
And I think another movie that includes John Huston. Although I don't know if Criterion wants to touch Roman Polanski again.
I was gonna say if they could just scrub his name.
Yeah,
off
I don't think they would want to do that. But my last choice was gonna be John Carpenter's The Thing.
That would be amazing.
Because I think that you cannot have a conversation about horror or thriller without including that movie.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I find Criterion's strongly lacking in horror movies. And
Sure.
I'm hoping they sort of find more respect for the genre over time when they see, like, you know, how influential some of these movies have been. Like, even Halloween could use a Criterion release. Or if you want to go like Carpenter's old movies like Dark Star, movies that could use like a restoration, it would be nice to see them like recognize John Carpenter a little bit.
Yeah, I think Halloween had a Laserdisc release by them. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I think horror is definitely lacking in the Criterion department. And there was a good example of that is a while ago they put out it's only DVD. And they put out like a Monsters and Mad Men pack. And one of the movies in there I discovered in the past like 5 years called The Corridors of Blood, starring Boris Karloff. And it's on that set. And I think more movies like that need to be represented and restored because God, the original cut is god awful. But
yeah, there's so many horror movies too that like the original versions of them are just awful and you can't find a good version anywhere.
You know, the best example of that is White Zombie.
Yeah.
Because when I had to watch that movie, it was on Amazon Prime, and it looked like the negative was wiped in the anus of a dog and then like cut up with scissors. I'm like, what am I? But I wanted to watch it because I love Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
And it's technically like the first zombie film.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like an important movie too.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I agree that there should definitely be much more horror in the collection. Yeah. God, I wonder. I'm sure they have plans for something, right? I mean,
they have some here and there. Like Videodrome is on there. The Blob, obviously.
The Blob is great. They did a good job with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I love just a quick side note. I love that in the Blob, Steve McQueen's supposed to be like 20. No, he's supposed to be like, was it 18?
Yeah, and I think when 53.
No, when they filmed it, he was like 29, I think. But it's just so funny because he always looked old.
Yeah.
It didn't matter how young he was. There's oh my God. I feel like we could go on and on. So I guess at some point I got to shut myself up.
Yeah. The only other one on my list I had was Lost Highway. the David Lynch movie.
Oh, so unfortunately, Kino Lorber just put that out.
I just love that movie, and they have a bunch of other David Lynch movies, so it would be cool for that one to just like kind of join the collection. But they're pretty good to David Lynch, so
they just announced The Elephant Man.
Yeah,
which people are upset about because Studio Canal put out the 4K release of it, and they're like, "You're not doing 4K." It's like, listen, do you want them to start charging double of that high price point? Because that's what's going to happen. People don't understand that Criterion Collection caters to film buffs, and the main, not to pass judgment, but from what I understand, the main demographic of film buffs are usually like kids in college or people who would not necessarily have the disposable income to afford the hobby. So it's like, 4K, and then what happens when they eventually just like have to cease their business model? It's even if they were able to secure enough reservations and pre-orders, it wouldn't be feasible for them to do that. I think like what they're doing now is perfectly fine. Like the quality is still fantastic on most of these movies. So it's like, why even try to polish it when it's already polished, you know?
Yeah, but that was my last one, was just Lost Highway, because it's my personal favorite David Lynch movie. I think it's really underrated. And it would fit in. I think it would fit in with Criterion. Again, would love to see like bonus features and things like that.
So I actually heard that David Lynch gave Kino a really hard time about the release of that movie. And he was like, there was like this whole back and forth email chain, and Lynch was like kind of being a dick to them. But I don't know. It was probably over something dumb. But I think, I would like to see that in the collection too.
Yeah, I just love that movie.
Yeah.
Gosh, I had like so many. One of them was definitely, and I mean, like, they're all old as shit. It's stuff that people probably wouldn't know because they're so obscure, I guess. Like Caged from 1950, and it's like a women's prison film, which I recently found out is like apparently one of my favorite subgenres. I don't know what it is about female prison films. Like that's quality entertainment. But this one's just really good because it's like, it's marketed as like campy and over the top, but it's just like actually really dramatic and like gritty. So Caged, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Oh yeah, that should be in the collection 100%.
Absolutely. Dead Ringer, which is also another Bette Davis. Paul Henry directed. Nobody like remembers that he directed a whole ass film. Yeah, I mean he directed like 6 of them, but like this one was good. Heathers.
Heathers just got released by Arrow Video, but that would be, I fucking love Heathers. Like, sorry, no, but it's that definitely. I'm actually surprised Criterion didn't pick that up already.
Yeah, that movie, I feel like it's only the past like 5 or so years that people have been realizing how great it is, like on a mainstream level.
It's like gained
it had a resurgence recently, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I hadn't seen it until I found out about the musical, because, like, I was a musical kid in high school, so I kind of still have a little bit of attachment to that world. So when I found out that it had really good music, I was like, oh, what's this storyline? It feels like Mean Girls, but with murder. with murder.
But
suicide.
But with Drano in a glass.
Yeah. So, that was the thing that exposed me to that movie. And I think it was the same for, like, a lot of other people. Like, these little girls who just sing these happy little songs about wanting to find romance in high school that have never actually seen the movie.
Yeah.
True. I can relate. That's straight up a 5-star movie for me.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
I think that no matter how many times I see it, it's just like such a bleak reminder of how tragic life can be. Like, it's just so, but it like in almost like a fucking pseudo beautiful way.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the like the best black comedies, especially from that time period. And it's like the humor never like aged really. It's still just as funny and just as like bleak now, which is awesome. And that's why I think it's seeing kind of a resurgence because it's still so funny. It's still so good. And yeah, there's a musical. It's pretty cool. It's cool to see a random movie like that just kind of like come back and like people are recognizing it's great.
Yeah, and the same thing happened earlier with which should also be in the collection. But I'm a cheerleader. Like now it's found a brand new audience because of the conversation about sexuality and opening up and being yourself, and I think that definitely belongs in there too. So fun fact: the director of Heathers also directed Airheads. Did not know that. Not know that. I know. I love it. Yeah. I mean, oh my God, we're gushing. We hate film. Should we break?
Speaking of hating film,
yes.
I'm sorry. If you guys could sacrifice one film in the collection for the sake of another, what would you? Follow?
Oh, wow, that's an interesting question. So I would probably, because I'm a really big Cary Grant fan, I think I would probably substitute Only Angels Have Wings for North by Northwest. I think that Only Angels Have Wings is a fine movie, but I think that North by Northwest was a much more epic endeavor, and I think like that definitely deserves to be in there a little bit more than the previous.
Yeah, for me, it's like I kind of mentioned a bunch that are directors who already have movies in there. So like, even though I love Twin Peaks, I don't know that Fire Walk with Me is like more worthy of a Criterion release than like Lost Highway or some of Lynch's other movies. So I'd probably switch one of those out. That or like one of the Kubrick movies also could be like switched out for another one.
I agree with Twin Peaks, especially because like if you're not familiar with Twin Peaks and you just watch the movie, you're kind of just like, all right, well,
yeah, it's kind of a divisive movie anyway. Like there a lot of David Lynch fans don't really like it, and a lot of Twin Peaks fans don't really like it. So
yeah,
I would switch that out for
agree.
Something more accessible, I think.
I would agree with you on that one.
But again, I'm sure that's a licensing thing. That's why it's there. But that would be mine.
Well, what about you?
Well, I would probably, as much as I love Clooney Brown, I would probably sub it for Madame Bovary, which was another Jennifer Jones film, and it was directed by Minnelli, because, again, Minnelli is just fucking amazing. Just stylistically, it's a great movie, and I think it's much more, remarkable than Clooney Brown, but the whole reason why I brought up the question was to just slip this into conversation. Why the fuck is Marriage Story in the Criterion collection? I'm sorry, unpopular opinion. It's not even that good.
I don't like it at all.
No
and
one cares
Joe's not
about
here
your
to defend
failing
it.
suburban marriage.
Sorry, Joe.
Fuck you, Joe. We hate
sorry,
the movies
Joe.
you like.
No, I
like it's brand new. Everybody's already making opinions about it from the second they see it.
I think, okay, so here's my opinion on this, right? Because I did watch it. I think that Marriage Story, if it were to just come out as its own standalone movie and didn't have Baumbach's name attached to it, people would probably be like, oh, okay, it's just another representation of like a failed marriage and them like going through the decline of divorce. Like they're friends at first and then they like just get into each other under their fucking skin. But now I think because it's a Baumbach film, a lot more people are more willing to give it that pass. And I look, I guess I'm too kind when it comes to critiquing. I thought it was fine. I thought it was a fine movie, but I could see why it's a little, the story's been told too many times. I think it's a stale story is the problem. So, and it did nothing groundbreaking for me. I mean,
I think I wrote that in my Letterboxd review too. Like it was fine, but it was very like, to me, I found it very like unambitious. There was just not much there that it's like, oh, this is like an important movie for this reason. It's like, it's fine as a movie, but I don't see really what all the...
It almost seemed like, to me, just the skeleton vehicle for Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, just to have them in a movie, because they're such big names in their own franchises at the time. Let's just take like a movie that's not controversial. It's really safe. Let's put on the kid gloves. Let's have them show off like they're really talented. Like I'll give them that. Like it wasn't an objectively bad movie. It's just that like, is it remarkable? Is it worth all the hype that it got?
Yeah,
I don't
wouldn't
think
say
so.
so.
No,
I think safe
so.
is the perfect word
Yeah.
for that movie.
It was
It's
very
a
safe.
safe movie.
Yeah.
There's
Absolutely.
nothing controversial about it. I don't find, at least.
Man. Yeah, it's there. It's just there, you know.
I honestly think Criterion picked it up just because it, for whatever reason, became like the big movie that like film buffs were into last year. Because I don't see what about it necessarily like makes it a Criterion movie.
Yeah, I don't really. Now fucking the
Joe's
decision,
gonna quit.
Joe is gonna quit. The
Sorry,
decision
Joe.
the decision I do respect though is putting Parasite in there. I think as far as like adding a new movie, that was a good choice.
Yeah.
But we've already gushed about that movie plenty of times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and the beautiful part about this conversation is that like we all come from different walks of life. We've all seen so many random movies that it's just so interesting to see like what we would want to see in the collection, because it's like they do such a good job of curating the picks. And you're like, oh, wow, that's a great job. But what if you also did this? And then like sometimes they do. Like for a long time, I was like, okay, you got plenty of Charlie Chaplin, right? You got Modern Times. You got The Great Dictator. You got like The Kid, all of his greats. I'm like, but where's The Circus? Because that is one of his best fucking movies. And then they released it. And I was like, there you go. And it gives you hope because like we have this conversation and some of the picks we selected probably aren't possible, but it could happen. And
Yeah,
who
you
knows?
never know. It's always exciting to just like follow Criterion.
Yeah, and the most important part is that they give a shit, is that they're passionate about it. They're not doing it for money. They're doing it because they absolutely love movies. I mean, even when you see like a behind the scenes of like I saw this guy editing the Apu trilogy. They did like a little behind the scenes flick of it. And you could just see like in his eyes, he was just like so excited about it. And it's like, this is what I do. This is what I get to do. And like, that's just so cool to see. Like, I admire that, you know? So just goes to show you like how much work they put into all of this. You know, it's a lot of work. A lot of work, but it's a labor of love. So
too bad movies suck and are bad and
movies
have no
do
value.
suck. Actually, Mary, if we could rewind, I would probably replace every movie for Norbit. I think
I would just destroy everything in the entire collection. I would burn
Oscar
it all.
nominated Norbit.
Yeah.
Oscar nominated Norbit. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, I did have one more because this was another Laserdisc release, but I want Monty Python and the Holy Grail restored. I think that
would be great.
That is like the pinnacle of comedy. I think that deserves to be in the collection. But again, I'm sure it's something with the rights. I don't know. Yeah. That pretty much exhausted my list. I mean, Mary, I know you probably have like a laundry list. So
yeah, like we don't have the time. You know?
Yeah.
So that's fine.
It's all right. I booked the Zoom chat till 8:00. It's yeah. I mean, look, the moral of the story is movies suck, but also they're kind of good.
That's the tagline for this podcast.
Well, that's what this. I was given a card by thelobster.com to read that, so I just wanted to be professional. Yeah. Anyway, so did you guys have any closing thoughts, or you just want to get off this fucking shit show now?
No, I got to talk about all the movies I wanted to, but yeah, I would just like to see them do a little bit more horror movies, a little bit more like 70s and 80s horror movies. That would be nice to see.
Yeah. We'll get there. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
With time.
Maybe. All right. Well, this has been the Silver Screen Fiends podcast. I've been your host, Sam. That is the good boy, Blake. And we have been joined by Mary. Mary Likes Movies. So go to the Instagram, go to the letterbox. You got anything else to plug?
I'm a SoundCloud rapper in my spare time.
Oh yeah.
I might be. I'm an indie folk SoundCloud rapper. My sad raps.
My favorite genre.
That lo-fi.
You can really do some homework to it or fall apart and pay bills.
Hell yeah.
No, but thanks for having me a lot.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I've had a fun time.
Yeah. We'll definitely we'll have to do this again. Maybe it'll just be about Norbit, but we'll think of something to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until then, keep hating movies. Go on Letterboxd. Go to thelobster.com. Fuck you, Joe. And I love you all. And have a good night, good evening, whenever the fuck you're maybe not listening to this.
Yep.